Good evening. Truth is powerful, and it prevails. This is perhaps the most famous quote from feminist abolitionist and civil rights activist Sojourner Truth. Sojourner was famous on the lecture circuit in the 19th century and was often, as is stated by Nell Irvin Painter, has often been viewed as being famous for being famous. Though her memory endures, historians often struggle with her story, and in fact, no scholarly biography of Truth exists. The ones that do are left with holes that exist as a result of the poor source material stemming from the fact of Truth's illiteracy. Painter, in one of her many articles on Truth, writes, "The Sojourner Truth biographical problem becomes a larger question of how to deal with people who are in history but have left no kinds of sources to which historians and biographers often turn. For this reason and several others, her story often goes untold. Today, though, I want to tell you her story, or at least the pieces of it that we think we know." I first read about Sojourner Truth when I was a teenager. My U.S. history teacher read aloud to us the speech she gave in the 1851 Women's Rights Convention held in Akron, Ohio, and since then, she has stuck with me. Sojourner, or Isabella Baumfree as she was known then, was born into slavery in Ulster County, New York in 1797. She was bought and sold 4 times. She was subjected, like most other slaves, to harsh physical labor and frequent beatings. She was forced into a union with a man she did not love, and she bore him 5 children. In 1827, after her master failed to uphold the New York anti-slavery law, she ran away, bringing with her her youngest child, only an infant then. In 1828, she moved to New York City, where she worked with a local minister and cut her teeth at public speaking. She acted in religious revivals and became quite the charismatic speaker, according to Deborah Michaels, a scholar who wrote often on truth. Michaels notes in her work that was published by the National Women's History Museum that in 1843, Isabella declared that the Spirit had called upon her to preach the truth. At this time, Isabella renamed herself Sojourner. During the period after her escape, when she moved to the city, Sojourner became involved in the fast-growing anti-slavery movement alongside people like William Lloyd Garrison and Frederick Douglass. She soon became involved, too, in the temperance movement alongside women like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. In 1851, Truth began a lecture tour that included the Women's Rights Convention conference in Ohio that I mentioned before. At this conference, Truth gave her famous speech, "Ain't I a Woman?" With this speech, Truth is challenging notions of racial and gender inferiority and is calling for suffrage for formerly enslaved women and men alike. This speech is perhaps the part of Truth's story that is the most influential and the most problematic. There are versions of this speech that most people are familiar with, and apparently they are nothing like the original. Truth's speech was written 12 years after it was originally delivered by white abolitionist Dana Parker Gage. Gage admitted that her amended version had given but a faint sketch of Sojourner's original speech, but she argued that she was justified because her version was more palpable. The Sojourner Truth Project came about several years ago, when Leslie Podell set out to right the wrong done by Gage. She published several existing versions of Truth's speech and has dedicated significant time and work to re-authenticating Truth's words in the dialect that she would have used. Though some of her most famous words were twisted, her impact was significant. Truth and other abolitionists like her spoke loud and clear. Anne Phoenix, in an article detailing Truth's "Ain't I a Woman" speech, offers that Truth should not be caged by the violence of slavery, even as she was violently marked by it. She goes on to say that there are millions of women today who remain marginalized, treated as a problem, or constructed at the low point of a moral panic. Women suffering poverty, disease, lack of water, proper sanitation, women who themselves and their households are scattered scores the globe as economic migrants, undocumented workers and refugees and asylum seekers, women whose bodies and sexualities are commodified, fetishized, criminalized, racialized, and regulated through a myriad of reprehensible regimes and social practices. This is why it is so important to still tell truth's story, and to do so truthfully. In her famous speech, Sojourner says, "If the first woman that God ever made could turn the world upside down alone, then these women, all of us, together, ought to be able to turn it right side up again." I am here today to ask you all to remember women like Sojourner Truth and to retell their stories so that we might better help keep the world right side up. Thank you.